So, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Resisting the Normalization of Pushbacks and the Normalization of Pushbacks in the European Union. This is the second webinar of the series. My name is Katerina Anastasiou. I am the facilitator for Transform Europe on the topics of migration and global strategy, and I will be your host today in today's webinar. Today, we want to talk with each other, discuss and listen about pushbacks. Pushback is an illegal method of border management that has been continuously normalized in the last years in the inner European borders and the outer European borders at sea, but also at land. Despite the fact that pushbacks constitute a violation of the principle of non-refoulment, we have seen an exacerbation of the use of these methods, both by authorities, but also sometimes from very shady militias and organizations, human rights organizations, solidarity structures, collectives, really try to organize, document these pushbacks, bring them to justice and fight back. So we will discuss today in this frame. I have the honor to present our first speaker for today, Elena Bizzi, who works for EuroMed Rights. She joined EuroMed Rights in September 2016 as a program assistant on migration and asylum, and since February 2022, she's the program coordinator of on migration and asylum for EuroMed Rights. At EuroMed, she coordinates the working group of migration with member organizations from both shores of the Mediterranean Sea. And they organize network, but also capacity building, advocacy, and communication activities. She is volunteering and has a lot of experience also in the NGO sector in the field of migration and asylum in Italy. She has a master's degree in international relations and in modern languages from the University of Bologna. I will let Elena tell you more about EuroMed Rights and the network per se when she starts her presentation. Welcome, Elena. Perhaps you want to say hello before we get into interviewing you today.
Yes, thanks a lot, Katerina. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for this webinar. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. So we asked Elena to join us today also because EuroMed Rights has been monitoring, following the situation on pushbacks in the southern eastern Mediterranean. And now, Elena, perhaps I will pass the mic on to you, and you can start by explaining us how the situation looks like right now in the areas you focus on, particularly on a very blind spot when it comes to pushbacks that is not very talked about, which is Cyprus. So the microphone and the floor is yours.
Great, thanks a lot, Katerina. So yes, just a few words on EuroMed Rights. As Katerina mentioned, we are a network of around 68 human rights organizations based in the Euro-Mediterranean region, so in Europe and North Africa and Middle East. And as a migration and asylum program, we really work with our members on the ground. We document and denounce the violations at borders. We carrying out networking activities with our members, capacity building, and also, of course, we engage in advocacy and awareness raising campaigns and communication activities. So as Katerina mentioned, I will focus on the situation in the southeastern Mediterranean with a focus on Cyprus. So, of course, we monitor and document also with our members on the ground the situation also of the pushbacks from Greece to Turkey. We are very, very concerned of the situation, both in the sea, the pushbacks at sea, but also at land borders. with the use of the inflatable boats to push back people back to Turkey at sea. So we all everyone are very much aware of the situations and the violations happening there. But yeah, just to focus on the situation at the Cyprus-Lebanon border, because we think it's a little bit less known, the situation and the violations that are happening there. So basically, since March 2020, we've been documenting with our members in Cyprus and Lebanon at least 500 people who have been pushed back from Cyprus to Lebanon, and first from Cyprus to Turkey also, but mainly then from Cyprus to Lebanon. Including women and children. And since January 2021, we've been documenting also a very worrying trend of chain pushbacks to Syria. So people who were pushed back from Cyprus to Lebanon were then deported from Lebanon to Syria. Some of them we know as being subject to inhuman and degrading treatment, detention, violations, torture. So yeah, that's very, very concerning. So why, let's say, the Syrians who have been pushed back from Cyprus to Lebanon are also deported to Syria, because in Lebanon, Syrians who entered Lebanon after April 2019 don't have a protection, a legal status. Only 20% of Syrians are registered under the UNHCR, but it's a very few. And also the deteriorating conditions in Lebanon, the socioeconomic crisis have led many Syrians and also Lebanese people to take smuggling routes to Cyprus. So Cyprus is saying that these pushbacks are happening in the framework of a readmission agreement signed with Lebanon. This agreement is untransparent. We don't have visibility absolutely at all on this agreement. We don't know whether the Lebanese parliament has ratified this agreement. And we know that there is a mention to the Geneva Convention in the agreement, but Lebanon is not a signatory, for example, to the Geneva Convention. But just to give you an example of a pushback that we've been following, documenting with our members on the ground, this happened in last August 2021. During this pushback, one person went missing, and at least we know that at least 3 people were deported. Once they've been pushed back to Lebanon, were then deported to Syria and are actually currently missing. During this pushback, one Syrian woman who was 9 months pregnant was allowed to disembark in Cyprus, but at the same time her husband and her 2 children were pushed back to Lebanon. So there was this forced separation of this family. The woman was then allowed to stay in Cyprus. She gave birth, but the family and the children were still in Lebanon. So we launched a campaign for this to ask for the family unification of this family, to denounce the unlawful pushbacks and the responsibility of Cyprus in these pushbacks. And then we know that when the Pope visited Cyprus, he decided to take some refugees to Italy, and one of those refugees was this woman that we followed in her story in Cyprus. And we knew also that the husband and the two children were able to take a boat again and arrive in Cyprus and reunite with her. Of course, this was not the way we have wanted this family to be reunited, of course, because the husband and the children had to risk their life again, taking the boat to be reunited instead of having the possibility of having safe and legal pathways to reunite with the woman. And then, yeah, lately we actually didn't document many pushbacks in the last months. The last one was in November 2021, when a boat with around 60 people, both Syrians and Lebanese, arrived in Cyprus, and the Cyprus authorities told them that they wanted to push them back to Lebanon, and they actually decided to continue the journey to Italy. And we know that they arrived in Italy at the end, but so we don't really know why lately, I mean, the pushbacks were reduced, maybe from pressures, not public pressures, from political pressures. We don't really know. We know that there's been an increase. I mean, there are quite a lot of arrivals by sea, according to UNHCR. Around 1,000 people arrived in Cyprus by sea in the last month of 2021. So we are, following, of course, the situation there with our members on the ground.
Thank you, Elena. Also, I mean, I want to stay a little bit in the question of responsibility and impunity, because you said the Cyprus government really claims to have a readmission agreement that is a ghost agreement, from what I understand. Do you know, I mean, what is going on with this agreement? This is a question, actually. And what about the European Union? Is there any reaction on their side? How are they handling it? And perhaps also in this context, do you see a difference in the way they handle this than to Greece, or from what you've heard? And is it only Syrian people also, or also people from Palestine, for example, or predominantly Syrians in your attention? Maybe this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Katerina. Just to reply to your last question, it's mainly, I mean, as far as we've been able to document, it's mainly Syrians and Lebanese people who are traveling, to Cyprus and have been pushed back. Yes, this agreement, it's completely unclear, opaque. We don't have visibility on the content of the agreement. We know that the Minister of Interior of Cyprus visited recently Lebanon to continue cooperation. I mean, to increase cooperation with Lebanon on returns. And we see that the EU is silent publicly regarding these pushbacks. We've been trying to advocate towards the European Commission to ask for example, infringement procedures against Cyprus for these pushbacks. This didn't happen. We know that recently the EU signed an agreement with Cyprus on migration, mainly on the increasing like the efficiency and the reception conditions in the island, yeah, and a part of the agreement also aims at increasing returns from Cyprus, and we know that there are also discussions with Frontex to involve Frontex in the control at sea and at land borders, because yeah, there is also the issue of the Green Line in Cyprus, and the Cyprus government is pushing the EU for increasing funds for increasing control also at the Green Line, militarize the Green Line, the border, and in January there was in conference, the Vilnius conference, where 16 EU member states, including Cyprus, asked the European Commission to provide funds for militarizing and increasing border controls. So yeah, that's a very worrying situation, and yeah, the Cypriot government is of course responsible for these violations of the principle of non-refoulement, of EU and international law. Yeah, and also the Commission that, I mean, the European Union should more publicly denounce these and yeah, denouncing this issue.
Thank you, Elena. I don't know, I think I would like to get Monica in the discussion before coming back to you, discussing a little bit strategy of what to do and how we actually resist this situation, because it is for a fact that a lot of organizations right now are also in a quite a pessimistic mood, because we don't see pushback stopping. We actually see them escalating even more. I mean, even in the case of the war in the Ukraine, we have pushbacks at borders of not good refugees. Let's now using the terminology of different governments around Europe. Today I was reading again about the case of a Roma family being pushed back at the Ukrainian border. So Monica, perhaps back to you now, because I also know you don't have much time, but what about the whole discussion around the new migration and asylum pact in the European Union? What do you see there, and do pushbacks get normalized through this? Does it become, let's say, a common ground?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in a way, we also discussed it in the first webinar when we were talking about legal mitigation, that somehow these illegal practices can be interpreted, and I think there are some reasons for that, as a kind of preparation to legalize them, or as Gianfranco put it, also as like a test balloon, if it is accepted. And I would like, I say a bit about this pact, how it is standing now, but I think one problem here is also, Elena also mentioned that we have an illegal practice of a member state, right? But then we do not have legal means to repair the situation. So once the people are pushed back, they are wherever they are. And I remember this about your story about this, the half of the family which was pushed back, that we had a crazy case of a guy Syrian guy who applied for asylum in Austria. Then he got a ticket and was said, take this ticket and go to the camp. He only had Arabic as a language, so he took the wrong train and he went to Hungary. Hungary pushed him to Serbia without any reason. They could just send him to Austria by Dublin procedure. And then we tried to find a legal way to get him back. And by the end of the day, he came on the same way as he came the first time. So this is something where we have a completely unsatisfactory and also somehow, legally speaking, weird situation of this. And I think there are good reasons to think, as Gianfranco said, that this is a kind of preparation to what should be implemented. So there is this this planned pact on asylum and migration that the European Commission has been working on since 2019. And then was a proposal to the Council in fall 2020. And up to now, it is not implemented because the member states cannot find a kind of common opinion on that. And actually, I think this is rather good news for us because it would really get worse. And I thought this was very clearly described actually by the Vice President of the European Commission, by Margaritis Schinas, who said what they plan to do is a 3-floor building. And the first floor is basically that people should stay where they are, in the country of origin, and that somehow the European Union should support these countries. Now, I mean, this is not new, and we know what it means. It doesn't mean that they try to create better living and conditions for people, but to increase border controls so that people cannot leave. So this would be the first floor. The second floor would be border controls at the outer borders of the European Union, and especially these fast-track procedures. And now, I mean, I know I'm not speaking legally correctly, I'm aware of that, but I think these fast-track procedures are very close to what we see as pushbacks now. You do not have a real asylum procedure in a fast track. This is not possible. I mean, even in a normal asylum procedure, there are many doubts if you really, as individual case, is treated and assessed properly. So what do you do in like 12 days or something like that? And this fast track procedure should apply to everybody who is coming from a country where you have less than 20% of positive decisions about asylum or subsidiary protection in EU average, right? And then you should have fingerprinting and whatever, and more security controls, you can imagine. And then you have the third floor. This is if people, against all expectations, really make it to the European Union. And then we have a kind of solidarity mechanism. And as it was never possible to have this kind of distribution of refugees among the member states because the member states didn't want that. It's also a problem. It's also problematic, obviously, for the refugees if they want to be distributed. But anyway, this was not the problem for the EU, but the member states. So now it should be solved via money. So those who accept refugees get money. Those who don't accept refugees pay. And one favorite concept for this finance balance of finances are so-called return sponsorships, so that the countries who do not take refugees pay for other countries to deport these refugees. So basically what we see here is it is all about how not to let them in or how to get them out. And I stop in a second, but just one thing which I think is also interesting. I mean, now we have this, for the first time, this directive on temporary protection was implemented with regard to Ukrainian citizens, not refugees from Ukraine, but Ukrainian citizens. And this is a problem in itself. But anyway, for them. And this directive is from 2001, right? And it has never been used. And in 2020, the Commission proposed to replace this directive by a regulation, which would be part of this pact. And this regulation would mean that the Commission can implement it without the Council, so it would be like more easily to implement, and it would focus on the member state concerned. And for this member state, it would be possible to give temporary protection to those who are then under this directive, whoever that is. And for all others, it would mean for this member state that they can have fast-track procedures at the border for those from countries with less than 75% of positive decisions in EU average. This would, I checked it for now, for 2021, it would mean that only people from Venezuela, from Syria, and from Eritrea would have the chance to a proper asylum procedure. All others could be just rejected at the border in this fast-track procedure. And I really think that this is, that we can see that this is a kind of continuum to what you described now, Elena, these pushbacks, and then in a legalized way. And in this way, I also really agree with what other people said in the first webinar, that it is so important to fight against these pushbacks, not only because of the individual cases, but because, as the title of this webinar is, because it is a step to normalization and then to legalization of something which goes clearly against the Geneva Convention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Monica. I will not say about these optimistic words because there's nothing optimistic about the situation we're in. Elena, back to you, perhaps. I mean, how do you discuss this in EuroMed rights? And do you think a little bit on strategies? What are the current things you plan in order to resist the pushbacks? I mean, around Europe, there are different initiatives. There's also this Abolish Frontex campaign. There's the Stop Pushbacks campaign in Greece. But yes, as I said before, we are all frustrated. Everybody works all the time and we feel a bit like Sisyphus. So perhaps you have some ideas that could also help the others and us to come together, or some moments we could know about. The microphone is yours. And of course, if you want to add something or compliment Monica, please do so.
Thanks a lot, Katerina and Monica. Yes, just on the EU Pact, in effect, I wanted to mention that as EuroMed Rights, we did an analysis on the possible implementation of the EU Pact, because actually, yeah, the Commission proposed this pact without an actual impact assessment. And then the impact assessment from the European Parliament came out this summer, and some of the conclusions are really worrying and similar to the analysis that we carried out on the pact. So basically, we tried to see how the border procedures, as Monica was mentioning, would apply to certain first arrival countries such as Italy, Spain, and Greece. And we really saw that, of course, it would not only violate human rights, migrants and refugees' rights, but it would also be unfeasible in practice for member states to be implemented. Because, for example, in Greece, we analyzed the number of arrivals during 2016, taken as a year of crisis, because there was an increased number of arrivals, and applying these numbers to the provisions in the pact would mean that Greece would have to increase its detention capacity by 35 times. So that this would mean a massive use of detention, deprivation of liberty, but also, actual infeasibility in practice. So one of our strategy was to really study a little bit the possible implementation and show that these won't work. What we usually do, of course, is to work with our members on the ground, to have information on the ground, so to document the denounce through awareness raising campaigns, as I mentioned, the one on Cyprus, and then of course engage in advocacy activities at the European, national, international levels. For example, there will be a hearing in the Libe Committee of the European Parliament on Cyprus, on the migratory situation in Cyprus, on the 21st of April, in which we are invited to present a little and denounce the situation. Then there have been also some hearings in national parliaments, recently one in the Belgian parliament, and they produced a resolution condemning the use of pushbacks at the US external borders. Also in Cyprus, there was a parliamentary discussion at the Human Rights Committee that they were able to open independent inquiry into the conduct of the Cypriot police in these pushbacks. And then we produce like a submission for the report of the UN Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights of Migrants for his report on pushbacks. But then we try also to combine like advocacy activities with litigations as much as possible, bringing cases at the European Court of Human Rights or at the UN Committee Against Torture, for example, for these cases of pushbacks that we've been able to document. The problem, of course, with the strategic litigations is that it requires like a long process, a long procedure, and a lot of also administrative obstacles, and the fact that you have to be always in contact with the families or the victims of pushbacks, and it's of course not always easy. But of course, for us, it's very important to be together, I mean, to build this network of activists, of organizations, civil society, litigators, to be able to exchange practices of different borders also, yeah, to try to react and resist these violations. Yeah.
Thank you, Elena. Thanks. I think I would stop the recording now and let everybody else join us as well. Yes. So we start coming into discussion. So to the YouTube audience, bye-bye, and see you at the next webinar in a week.